there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bobby Hurricane Spencer back with you again. We're going to do a lesson here on the G7 chord. The key of C is the 5 chord. If I were doing blues like I was doing then, a little bit of what we call funk, it would be the 1 chord. But let me show you first of all how you build a G7 chord. Okay, we're going to look at our keyboard and see the 2 black keys, 3 black keys, 2, 3, and that's the way the keyboard is all the way up and down. So let's start with our C here and count up 5 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to build our G7 chord right here on this 5th step. Now what we're going to do is hit our G, skip the next note, hit our B, skip the next note, hit our D, skip the next note, and hit our F, which is the 7th. So we got root, 3rd, 5th, 7. That's your G7 chord. This chord is used in every key. The 5 chord is what it is. And it's used in jazz extensively. It's used in blues and almost every kind of music very extensively. So we saw how you build the chord. Now let's see how you extend it. Get it a little more technically complicated. We build our root, same thing we did before, 3rd, 5th, 7th. Let's add an A up here, 9. Okay, so now we're hitting a G7 with a 9, or a G dominant 9. Okay, now we can extend it further. We can skip another note and go up here to a C. Now we got a G11th. We can even go further. We can go up another 3rd. Listen to that. So we're in the 13th, but you're not going to see hardly anybody play it like that in jazz. So we're going to go back down to our G7, and we're going to find out what notes we can eliminate. Well, in the modern jazz, somewhere starting around Wynton Kelly and Bill Evans, they dropped the root. Just drop the G. So what do you got now? You got, look, of your 7th chord, you got only 3 notes left. Well, it's been known for a long time that in all music, classical, you drop the D, the 5th. So what do you got left? You got a B and a D. I mean, you got a B and an F. You got the 3rd and the 7th. Now, going back to your 9th, your A, right here you got a G9th chord. That's a very prevalent voicing in jazz. Now, if you want to go up here, very often we skip the 11th. There's a certain special ways we use that. I'm not going to go into that right now. So we're going to skip the 11th, and we're going to go up to the 13th. So that's another prevalent voicing in jazz. Very often now, what we'll do is we'll take the 7th, we'll put it down an octave, keep the B. We're not going to have the D. Let's take the E down. So there you have a G13. You only need 3 notes. So those are some of the voicings you can do with the G7. The 7th chord, the 5/7 of any key. Now let's do some other things with it. Let's go back to our basic G, B, D, F. Now a lot of times in jazz, they like to take the 5th, instead of throwing it out, let's move down 1 to the next lower black key. Let's go down a half step. Hear that dissonance? They love that sound. So now you got a G7 with a flat 5. Used a lot in jazz. Now another thing you can do with it is you got your G, B, D, F. Sometimes this 5th, instead of throwing out, you want to raise it to an augmented. When it goes up, they call it augmented. Very used a lot in jazz. Okay, now let's go back to the 5th. Now a lot of times in jazz, they like to take this A, the 9th. They like to take it down a half step to the black key below. So a lot of times they like to throw out the root, the G, which is really a diminished chord. But if you got a G down, and if the bass player is playing a G, you're playing a G9, G flat 9 with a G flat 9. There's another thing they like to do. Let's leave our G off for a minute. B, D, F. You got your 9, right? We flattened it. Let's do like we did with the 5th. Let's raise it. That's used a lot in jazz. And let's look at, let's go back to our basic chord and see what we did. We did something, we added a 9th. We could have added 11th, but we'll talk about that in another context. One of the problems with 11 is it clashes with the 3rd. Now in some really very modern chords, they would use this clash. But right now we won't deal with that. We're going up another 3rd to the 13th. Okay, now if you were to count from G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's why they call it a 13th. So what did you learn today? We went into the 5 chord of a key. Like in the key of C, it's a G7th. And we extended it. We put the A on there, skipped the 11th, put a 13th. Then we showed you what notes you take out. Okay, we're going to take the root, the G out, because the bass player is going to be playing that. So you got this. You can take the 5th out. They've been doing that way past before Bach. So what are we going to have? This represents our G7 chord, just these 2 notes. We want the 9th maybe. Maybe we want the 13th. Okay. Now we're going to take the 7th, put it down an octave. Octave is 8 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're not going to have it up here, we're going to have it down here. Same note. Have the E in here, we can take it down an octave. Now, you have a G13, very hip chord, very hip chord. So we discussed all the things, some of the things, most of the things you can do with a 7 chord. There are even more. We'll get into those later. And this is Bobby Hurricane signing off. See you next lesson.